I'll just stop screen. Here, let me get. Okay, 3, 2. Hello and welcome to Left Coast Live. It is Thursday, December 19th, 2024. I am your host, Dieter McBusiness, joined as always by the one and only StatPat Stateless Patriot. We are California lefties talking to you about national politics. And today we have a very special guest. Generational Change is joining us. And with no further ado, thank you, Jen, for joining us so quickly after your stream.
Hi.
Hello.
Peter will be here in a minute. He'll be here in a minute.
There he is. What up, Pete?
Hello.
How are you?
Howdy.
My fellow brother, my fellow cousin of the corridor, right? You're from New York, is that right?
I was born in New York and I was raised in New Jersey.
Very good. Yeah, ain't nothing like I-95. We talk about it all the time on here, how the California could be a great political force in America if they would just get some of that East Coast edge going on and assert themselves. But that's a quest for us. That's what we live with out here is the softies.
Yeah, imagine if we had high-speed rail.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Of
yeah,
course.
then we'd be a little bit more connected, that's for sure, because it is like its own country. Well, we just enjoyed your show. Thought you had a very interesting guest. You guys were
Thank you.
picking her brain, and you guys always get great guests, and we appreciate you coming on our show. And we've got a lot to ask you about, but stay as long as you want. We talk a lot about political marketing here, like 3 legs to the political stool. There's policy, which is everyone's favorite on the left. And then there's politics, which are like kind of the individual politicians themselves. And then there's like the marketing, the kind of the machine that's organizing the messaging in some sort of cohesive way. And I don't know about you guys, but I keep waiting for someone to come along and call this MAGA culture what it is, which is just white trash America. Like, I don't know if you guys, it's like we keep saying, or I keep hearing about Gavin Newsom saying we need to play offense, and yet no one seems to be playing offense. Do you guys see anyone playing offense on the left right now?
They don't have anything to play offense with. What are they offering? What's their plan?
Yeah.
How would they play offense when all they can do is say we're not Trump? They don't have anything.
Right.
So they have nothing.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm really living in MAGA country. I am in the panhandle in the middle of Pensacola and Panama City. And my personal experience with most Trump supporters has been very positive. They're generally very nice people. But I also think that there is an element of just kind of giving up on the system at this point, which I think is a huge part of it.
Yes.
And from their perspective, it's like, well, I don't necessarily love Trump, but I'm going to support him because I feel like he can drive a dagger inadvertently, because Trump is clearly an oligarch. There's no getting around that. And I think enough of them admit that as much, but they know that he's such a loose cannon that he could end up causing a sea change almost inadvertently. And I think in a lot of ways that is his grand appeal. Now, where do I think a lot of his cult-like support comes from? It comes from the same echo chambers that we have to, sort of sift through all the time. It's the Nick Fuenteses of the world. It's the Benny Johnsons of the world. Ben Shapiro is the worst of them all because people think he's an intellectual.
So smart. He went to Harvard
because
Law.
he speaks fast. Because he talks fast, they think he's smart. I'm like, no, he's a moron.
Yeah. That is the echo chamber that I think is very devastating. And I've told this story once on my podcast before. I'll share it with you guys now and your audience. So when I was, this is actually when I was in South Florida, but when I first got into commercial real estate at the beginning of last year, I ended up taking a look at a property in Pompano Beach. And for those of you out there who don't know Pompano Beach, this is considered a very poor working class and even fairly dangerous area in South Florida. And so I went into one of these, we'll just say kind of run down miniature apartment complexes. And I walk into one of these apartments, and this guy clearly doesn't really have much going for him. And he does not keep up the apartment that he's living in. But he was standing in the middle of the afternoon in front of his laptop, and he was watching a podcast. Who was he watching? Tim Pool. So to me, that really said a lot about the appeal that some of these shows really have. They appeal to guys like this who probably are very unhappy in their own lives.
Yes.
They kind of hate the world, and they see people like Poole and the like speaking to them. They feel not that they give a fuck. Because
Yeah.
let me assure you, Jen and I have been to Tim's compound. He is living very high on the hog, and partially why he's living so high on the hog is because he has supporters like that who think that they actually care about them. Now, it may be a misnomer that they feel that way, but you know what? Who the hell else actually cares about them? So I totally understand where those individuals are coming from. They have a real rage at the world, and they feel that Trump today is speaking to it. But I got to tell you, Bernie in 2016 spoke to a lot of those people.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a friend of mine that I recently reconnected with that was a Bernie guy in 2016, and now he just voted for Trump. And I was like, wow, okay, because he described him as the Molotov cocktail that you were describing him as. He's just this big, dirty bomb, and we don't know what kind of change we're going to get, right? But we know that it's going to be different once he's done. And Stat Pack, go ahead.
Yeah, it's actually kind of remarkable just seeing like everything post-election. It's very much there is like an overlap between people who liked Bernie and voted for him in the primaries because they did want to see fundamental change because they see the system as broken, and they see that the same way with Trump. They may not agree with him personality-wise in just the way he behaves and the way he conducts himself. The fact that he does have a cabinet full of millionaires and billionaires, and he does serve. He is an oligarch, like Pete said, but there is an overlap of people in this country who, like, it doesn't matter who it is, they just know that the system's broken and they want to see it changed. I'm actually seeing a girl right now who considers herself a libertarian, and she acknowledges that the DNC, this corrupt institution and royally screws progressives, champions inauthenticity and screws progressives at every chance they get. And of course, this is going to fester in the minds of people and just make people all kinds of frustrated. And for better or for worse, the MAGA types, they see the same thing with Trump. They see him just dragged through the mud all the time. They see him not treated fairly by the powers that be. Of course, it's all for different reasons, but for the normies, I guess you could say, they kind of see these as equal because they see these two people, for just as two examples, Bernie and Trump, as fighting the establishment. Right. It's for different reasons, but they see them as outside the system. They see them as agitators, and they see these two as obviously hostile to the system and the way they're getting treated by the system. And the more time goes on, I'm not surprised that Trump won a second term.
I expected it.
Pete, do you think that the guys you're talking about that, you get along with, because I've got some Trumplicans in my life that I can't get rid of, do you think that they would define America as a meritocracy? I can't imagine they would, right?
No.
That's where we would overlap with them. But they've been programmed almost by the Reagan public memory of government is the problem, right? They think that blowing up the government, getting less government in our lives, as opposed to efficient and effective government, which they don't even think is possible, right?
Jen points this out all the time. It's like when people talk about Israel, Palestine, it's like they're not telling the full story. You're right. Government is the problem. But why is it the problem? Because it's captured by corporate special interests.
Right.
Bingo. That's it. It's like you can say that the government can't do shit. You're right. It can't. Do you see the bill that they're trying to pass right now? Yeah. And the reason it sucks so bad is because if you look at every piece of pork that's in there, it's for some corporate special interest entity that is basically bought off a politician in their given district and like, hey, give me some of that shit. I can only imagine what Wasserman Schultz is passing down here in the Fort Lauderdale area. And I can only imagine what Matt Gaetz's replacement is going to do the same up here in the Florida Panhandle. It's the same thing. It doesn't change. Until we recognize that it's the system that's broken, everything will continue. But because of what Mangione did, it's sort of like this touch point where the sea change is really starting to happen now because people are tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we both watched your live stream, and I remember you talking about it early, Jen, about how this is the revolution. This is what it looks like. And I theorized, Karl Marx was riffing on some Latin writer when he said, history repeats itself first as a tragedy, second as a farce. So if the Civil War repeated as a tragedy in civil rights, because obviously civil rights fell short of its goals, then it's repeating now as a farce. And that started, in my opinion, January 6, 2021. That's when everybody else kind of came to see that it's actually happening. So it's a slower burn type of revolution. But what do you think are the next steps? I mean, could you predict anything? I mean, I'm please show me the glass ball.
Well, the only difference I would say between like what you're saying and how I think of it is that for me, it's much more global than that. Like when you say, January 6th, that's very specific to us. What we're seeing right now is a global class war.
Yes.
And it's all over the place. We see it in South America. We're seeing it in Europe. We see it everywhere. Mm-hmm. And that is ultimately where this is going, because this isn't going to be a United States thing. Like empire will end. Empires end, they come, they go, whatever. This is a human thing that we're in at this point. I just think we're so focused on us because we're sort of like the beacon. Yes. Well, we are, but we're like the beacon of empire. So like I say, we live in the capital. If you watch Hunger Games, like, so we're fortunate enough that we live in the capital.
Right.
But the people that are in District 12, your people that are in Gaza, your Haitians, the Yemeni, the people that have, they're in the same empire that we're in. They're just in District 12.
Not as protected, right? They're not as protected as we are.
So this is a global class war.
Sure.
And when somebody like a Luigi Mangione comes along, and I hate people like saying, and I have to like clarify that I'm not a proponent of violence, but we are so violent. We are the most violent empire to have ever existed on this planet. So to act like this is such an outlier, and that's what amuses me about it, is watching the establishment and the elites being so taken aback that, oh my God, they're so violent. Yeah. I feel like this is a diehard moment where I'm like, welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah. We're pissed off. Like, that's what it comes down to. Like schmucks like Chris Cuomo, of course he's going to be, he has to toe the line of like, because Democrats are so obsessed with like civility politics and going along to get along and whatnot. It's like like they tried that in Kamala Harris's campaign, trying to court Republican votes. It's like, yeah, we can get along, we can work together with these guys. Ended up getting less Republican votes than Joe Biden, by the way. But yeah, the bottom line is people are pissed off, and so many people have been wronged by the system that we're not going like. We just turn a blind eye to what we see as vigilante justice. So it makes sense that the elites are so taken aback by it, because
they're out of touch.
They're completely out of touch.
Oblivious.
Yeah, they have absolutely no idea how badly screwed the common American person is, especially by what's supposed to be the greatest healthcare in the system in the world. And no, like, everybody has a horror story. You go to any website, any page, any news page covering the shooting of the CEO, covering Luigi Mangione. Nobody has you'll find very few people that actually have sympathy for the guy who was shot and killed. It's like,
so I use signposting in my essays, and the dichotomy that this one is my 15th, which is excuse versus explanation. So obviously no one's trying to excuse the murder, but you should explain why it's happening.
And they're trying to
why did we get it? We did that. We went through this with 9/11 too, when a lot of far lefties were like, "Why did this happen? What motivated these people to attack us this way?" And everybody started jumping up and down, like, "What are you condoning terrorism?" It's like, no, I'm trying to figure out why this fucking happened.
No, and isn't it funny? Like, isn't it funny whenever something like big and drastic and dramatic like this happens, all of a sudden UFOs and aliens are all over the news again. The drones, drones in New Jersey and shit. It's like, look, shiny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I haven't been following the drone thing. I mean, I know
it's
people
a nothing
are
burger. Yeah.
I'm just not that interested. Unless it starts shooting at people, unless they're shooting at people. Like, I think that, like, because the idea that they're spying on us, that ship sailed a long time ago.
Of course.
So what, like, that's why I'm not understanding. Like, why is this a story? Is it bombing people? Like, what are these drones doing?
Yeah, it's really just a nothing burger. It's just
Okay.
people misidentifying things in the sky. Yes, there are drones and whatnot, but and there's like an abundance of them. But like it's starting to get to the point where when mass panic sets in, and if something's being a lot more covered by the media, people start misidentifying what they're seeing in
Right.
the sky. They fucking.
Seeing what they want.
I guess there are some people that reported the planet Venus as an unusual object in the sky to authorities. It's just like, God, we're so doomed as a species.
All right, so Jen and Pete, let me ask you guys this, because you guys are not third party people, right? You think
I
that,
voted. I right now am no party affiliation,
right?
but I did vote for Jill Stein.
Okay. Well, and I'm not really even asking that as much as, do you believe that I don't want to say easiest, but the most likely path to progressive success comes from taking over the Democratic Party?
No.
No. What do you
Okay.
think is the most likely path
I
to
think the
success for
Democratic
progressive?
Party is going to go the way of the Whigs. I think they need to go away. I think they serve nothing anymore but corporate elites. They're basically like Republicans that are nicer to gay people. And that in and of itself is not sufficient enough to have a political movement be successful. And it's just dying off. That's the fact. Like they lose.
So you think it'll be replaced?
I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll end up with just one party and we'll be like China. I don't know. But
Yeah.
personally, I want no parties. I want
Right.
no parties. I don't
course.
like parties. I think that it's ridiculous. It is parties are to our electoral system what health insurance is to our health care.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like they're serving any purpose but themselves. I don't think that our salvation is coming from an election. I'm waiting for, like, this is a revolution and it is going to get ugly before it gets better. And I don't think we can vote our way out of it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot more likely that eventually America does become a one-party system before the Democrats actually wake the fuck up and allow progressives to actually take hold and implement at least a modicum of social democratic change. It's the ratchet effect. The Democrats keep progressive change from happening. They keep everything the way it is. Maybe a few tweaks here and there, throw the working class a bone, whatever. Whereas the Republicans are just like full-on fascism. Here we go. Revert this and that. Stack the Supreme Court with loyalists and whatnot. It's because ultimately the Democrats would rather have fascists in power than an actual genuine lefty.
Absolutely.
You can't be a counter party. You can't be an opposition party. You actually have to stand for something. You have to have principles. You have to have a message. You have to have people behind you. You have to have people that actually believe in you. And like with each passing day, I mean, I've known this since the demise, for lack of a better term, of Bernie Sanders, but just to see it just repeat itself all over again.
Yeah.
Right after Kamala Harris won, she went too far left, which is just beyond bullshit. It's
Yeah,
so
now they're all saying
old.
that it wasn't that bad of a loss, and that that we actually did really well, and Jamie Harrison deserves a pat on the back.
God.
And it's just ridiculous. So I'm still coping. I'm still in a place where I believe that with a transformative culture shift within the Democratic Party, it could become useful again. But that cultural shift would have to be massive and take the form of, to use your term, Jen, generational change within the leadership ranks of the DNC. And I think it would be along generational lines where we actually skip the Gen Xers and go right to millennials. Because if you look at generation demographics, the millennials are the only ones trending in the right direction. Everyone else is trending right.
Right, unfortunately, and it's
More than anything, though, I think the Democrats have struggled with talent, with a personality divide. They've OD'd on the concept of equality, and it's kind of like the left-wing narcissism where they want the leaders to be reflective of all the voters. And wouldn't that be nice if our leaders looked and sounded like and acted like all of our voters and so forth, and were representative of them? And I'm not talking about identity politics. It's the prerequisite for that is you have to be kind and accepting. And what StatPat and I talk a lot about is that if we are going to have generational change on the left in terms of leadership, we should be recruiting and promoting leaders who are competitors first. So no more Mr.
Yeah.
Nice Guy, no more kind and loving boss lady, no more politics of joy. I mean, did you guys recognize the glaring contradiction between Kamala's message of joy, yet her message was also, when we fight, we win, and then she's doing events with Liz Cheney. So who are we fighting? Are we fighting?
Most lethal fighting force.
That's what I was
Yeah,
going to
like-
say. The most lethal for, yeah, that's so joyous.
Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't understand that. I mean, are we supposed to be joyous when we win? Like that?
No,
makes
that's the but no, that really is the meme come to life of wrapping a bomb in a you know,
In a bow.
what you would call like or a rainbow flag. You know,
Yeah.
that's basically what it is.
Yeah,
They shot
it's my perspective, something I've basically been consistent with, I guess, since I realized, I mean, there's really not much you can do, so you might as well go with the lesser of two evils, for lack of a better phrasing, I guess you could say, because ultimately the Republicans, economically and when it comes to domestic policy, they're far worse when it comes to how like, for example, not people who voted for Trump really didn't have any idea what a tariff was, and now he's floating like 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, which is a violation of his trade agreement, the USMCA, that he put together in his first term. And it's just like, well, his voters don't understand that this is going to raise prices drastically. Like Kamala Harris was right when she talked about it basically being a tax on consumers and whatnot. Of course, it's like, how do you even reach those kind of people? Like when they don't even bother to research what it is that the guy that they're voting for is advocating. There's just a profound ignorance that it acts as like a layer that you can't really penetrate when it comes to a lot of these people who vote.
Yeah. Well, I've always said, it's funny, people talk about voter complacency. I'm like, no, I'd rather them be complacent than ignorant.
Yeah.
You don't want to have this thing where you have to take a test in order to vote. But the reality is most of the people in this country are so woefully ignorant.
Oh,
Yes.
A lot of it is purposeful.
yeah.
And we've dumbed down our population to this point that
Dramatically.
there is no critical thinking skills.
Right.
There's pure tribalism and teams. That's it. You pick a
Right.
team, you root for your team. There's no thought about it. There's no context,
Yep.
no nuance. There is
So I
no
want to embrace
critical
that.
thinking.
Keep going, but I want to embrace that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, that's the problem. So I see it on both sides.
Yes.
So when you see a blue MAGA person and they're all like progressive except for Palestine, or they're okay with these bombs but not those bombs, and the way that people rationalize, there's no consistency because they don't have any concept of what's going on. They're not thinking about it. They're merely following their leader.
Yes.
Or whoever the leader of their group, right? And that's the problem. Nobody is thinking about any of these things.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pete.
Go ahead, Pete.
No, go ahead, Stefan.
Oh, so if we're going to have this overarching team mentality, like go team go, we should rally behind people who actually know how to win and can actually people who have a winning mentality. Because after Kamala lost, the strategists that she surrounded herself with, the leaders of the DNC and whatnot, I didn't see anything that resembled anything resembling a fight. They had all these excuses, but and no accountability. It's like Nancy Pelosi, for example. It's like we don't. What did she say, Dieter? We don't dwell on our losses. We move on from the.
We move forward. Yeah.
We don't learn from
dwell on
them.
our failures.
It's just like.
It's like that's how a loser talks. That's
Yeah.
how a loser talks. Oh, we gave it a good try. We tried really hard. It's like what they give you the participation award culture.
Yeah,
Same shit.
It's not like the entire world was counting on this election, and consequences. It's not, and you're right, Jen. It's not just a U.S. thing. It is a global thing. You see Germany moving more towards the far right. You see France being handed over to the far right, and the Canadians, the Conservative Party is about to take power up there as well. Ultimately, like we said at the beginning of the stream, it does come down to ordinary people's frustration with the system and a longing for fundamental change. It could be a horrible change, but at least it's a change. It shakes the system. That's why Trump won his first term. It was a disaster, but a lot of people don't care. A lot of people didn't care that it was a disaster because they just want big change, like bar none.
Yeah, and that was
70%.
that was Bernie's greatest sin, was that he wasn't willing to be a martyr, and his decision to basically say we totally want
Play
a political
pancakes.
revolution. We're going to have a revolution in this country, and then he doesn't even come close to doing it. Now, whether it was because I believe partially that it was his wife being threatened because there was something with that college up in Vermont that she had an involvement with, this is what ends up happening. They're going to put the gun to your head one way or the other, either to you or to a family member or somebody close to you.
Yeah.
And that is the dirty nature of politics. You either are willing to accept, and that's part of the reason why Trump is so appealing, because he just doesn't care. He really is willing to play in the mud. And if you're willing to do that, then people are going to look at you as the type of fighter that they're willing to take, even if you aren't their first choice.
He fights like a winner. He fights like a winner.
He absolutely
sure
does.
Yeah. Takes no prisoners. And you know what winners do, like in physical sports, is they use their anger to motivate them. I mean, you talk to any pro athlete in basketball or football, whatever, it's the team that plays angry that wins.
I got a great cultural reference. So you guys have seen The Rock. You've all seen The Rock.
Yeah.
Everybody's seen that movie? Shame.
Sean Connery.
Losers always talk about their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen. It's like it's the truth. I mean, he's fucked the prom queen like his entire life. God. And he just we're totally going to win. We're going to win more than you've ever seen in your entire life. It's going to be really incredible. I mean, I'm winning for myself and my favorite people, but you're going to feel like you're winning. You're going to have that feeling that you're winning with us, and it's going to be really great. And that's
But the biggest problem, I think, is that the people that Democrats across the board, like regular people, are looking to, like leadership of the party, those people like your Nancy Pelosi's of the world, they have won. They win every time. So to them, this isn't a loss. That's the difference. Why do they see it as a loss? I think they prefer this. I do. I think they prefer, because they win either way. Their stock portfolios are fine. It matters not to them who is in the White House. But this allows them to fundraise and have no accountability for whatever it is that's not happening.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So when we say, why are they so comfortable losing? Because the truth is, people like Nancy Pelosi, they don't lose. They win either way.
Yeah.
Are you guys both in California?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in the Central Coast and he's in the Central Valley.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in a completely different part of the state where the political activity really ramps up, which of course is LA and San Francisco. And the one thing that I thought was so essential when it came to Democratic politics in the state, that I would imagine was probably a very big sticking point for both of you guys. Look, at the state level, it's very hard to find anybody who's really worth their salt. But I do think that Katie Porter was a very worthy person to make it to the upper chamber. And Adam Schiff is the embodiment of everything that is wrong with the Democratic Party. Yes. And the fact that he is such a filthy fuck, and he put all that money behind Yeager to basically get the nomination on the GOP side so that he can have a free walk and no one's doing a fucking thing. That should have been the end.
Yeah.
That should have been, as far as I'm concerned, if Trump goes after his ass now for the shit that we know that, and we know that he's a filthy fuck. And that there are probably things that they could probably get him in legal trouble on. I don't fucking care.
No,
like at this point, I don't care. Let Trump have you. Adam Schiff made it his mission in life to legally destroy Donald Trump. If Trump even gives him 10% of the shit that he threw at him in the last 8 years, Let him fucking have it. He deserves it. He earned it. And the fact is that the Democrats in the state of California got fucked over because I do think Katie Porter would have defeated him in a runoff election because she would have had energy behind her, and she probably would have had Barbara Lee's support, and that may very well have made the difference.
That was what I was gonna mention. Like it was such a frustrating thing because ultimately, I mean, if I remember correctly, because we did cover all this on the channel when it happened, it was just such a frustrating thing. I think even if one or the other, Barbara Lee dropped out or Katie Porter dropped out and endorsed one or the other, it still wouldn't have made up enough ground to overtake Adam Schiff for that primary, unfortunately. But either one of those two, I mean, obviously Barbara Lee, I would argue the most famous thing she's known for is being like the lone vote in opposing the Iraq War, like the approval of sending troops to Iraq. But and of course, Katie Porter, like there's numerous things. Either one of them would have been a fantastic addition over fucking Adam goddamn Schiff.
Yeah, he's a failed screenwriter, just like Ben Shapiro.
No kidding.
Weird. Something about those failed artists. I don't know. It's like
No
the kids
kidding.
who grow up with the animal violence towards animals and
God,
end up becoming school
it's like
shooters.
online
It's like the
conservative
failed
media
artists
is
becoming politicians.
they're full of them. The online conservative right and whatnot media full of those like Hollywood rejects and whatnot. I think the Daily Wire especially is full of them.
The one thing that I think you guys should be looking for in the next 2 years, especially if, as pathetic as this may be, but get ready for it, if Kamala decides to run for governor of California. So that's going to clear the field on the Democratic side. However, Butch Ware, who's already been a guest on our podcast, is going to be coming back on Monday. If I were you guys, especially because of the jungle primary system that you have in California, I would consider getting behind him and seeing what type of juice he might be capable of creating. Because honestly, and Jen, I think you would agree, if Butch had just a few million behind him, I think he would cause a real shitstorm in that state. He is a real, like he's a real leader. Like he has.
He's a teacher at UCSB.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's right down the street from me. That's funny.
So
All right, I'm gonna hit him up. I know some people over there.
he is the complete opposite of Jill Stein. With all due respect to Jill Stein,
He's got that whole Black revolutionary vibe going, and
very much.
that I think can appeal to people that might otherwise think that the Greens are just kind of like mansy-pansy. You know what I mean? Like the Greens have had a marketing problem forever. Their name alone, and again, I'll vote for the candidate, but they have a branding problem. The Greens have a branding problem.
Yep, they sure do.
And they have other internal issues, but I think somebody like Butch Ware would help with their branding.
Yeah,
and what they are.
Yeah,
and I
Jill,
think that's
I don't think Jill Stein's done the party any favors. There's just too much dirt out there about her and just like her. Yeah.
The biggest problem with Jill Stein, bar none, is that she comes off like an uber intellectual from the Northeast, which she is.
She is.
If you want to have some semblance of sort of like a revolutionary moment outside of the two-party system, somebody like Butch Ware is infinitely more likely to deliver it, but he's got to have at least somewhat of an infrastructure to play with. If he has it, I think he could be very dangerous. I believe that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when it comes to third parties, it does start, I think, at the state and local level, and this is the case like across the country. Like I think even people who are more akin to politics and following politics generally, they only look at the federal aspect, who's going to be president, and to a lesser extent who's going to be in the Congress and the Senate and whatnot. I don't think a lot of people really take as seriously down ballot races, let alone propositions, your city board and local positions and whatnot. That is just as essential because I mean, obviously it's local politics. You should be worried about who's representing you locally, and I say this because I'm from the town. You guys know who Michael Tubbs is? Does he sound familiar?
I think I've heard of the name.
He was the youngest mayor ever, right, in U.S. history or something
I think
like
so.
that?
Yeah,
I think he was the youngest ever. He's 28.
Okay.
Yeah, he was mayor of a town 320,000 Democrat, and he ended up being booted by a Republican. I think the last election, but he garnered such a national profile. Like, he was on the Daily Show. He championed a pilot program offering $500 to it was basically like Andrew Yang's thing, the universal basic income, and it was a pilot program, limited, but it was successful. And now I believe he's trying to make a run for lieutenant governor in California.
He is, yeah.
So you can start small. I mean, because
But that's a perfect example, Statpet. So do your due diligence on this, guys, and maybe if we do another stream someday, then I'd be interested to hear what you think of this guy, because yeah, he's got the right ideas, but he does not have the ethos of an angry competitor. He's another nice guy. He's too approachable.
And maybe that's where the yin and the yang between a Ware and a Tubbs could actually be effective.
Right.
And we've actually seen it work, because if you guys are familiar with Kenneth Mejia, he became the comptroller of Los Angeles, and he's a proud Green Party member, and no one talks about him because, of course, he's outside the two-party system.
Right.
So it can happen.
Right.
It can. But you have, like you said, Dieter, it's actually, a lot of it really comes down to, obviously it comes down to whether or not you're corrupt. I mean, I really think it's just that simple. But once you get past that, I do think personality is a huge part of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Bernie had a way with his personality that was his own style, but it appealed to people. Trump has his, he appeals to people. RFK has his, he appeals to people. Tulsi has her way, especially as a veteran, that appeals to people. You just have to see it. You have to understand. It's like, you may not agree with them politically, but you can see why people like them.
It's casting.
People
It's not
don't
so different from
understand that a
casting.
lot. I don't think people understand that a lot about being a candidate. Like,
Who the fuck liked Kamala? Like, honest to God.
I mean,
Nobody.
she was kind of a D.
That was,
hire,
let me
right?
tell you guys, if she got in there, that would have been the greatest heist in the history of politics. There would have been nothing like it. She did
kidding.
Literally nothing, with all due respect.
Well, a lot of people, there is no respect to be due. There's no respect for Kamala Harris. She sticks her finger in the air, figures out which way the wind is blowing, and then she's like, okay, I'll go that way. She went back on Medicare for all. She went back on weed. She went back on minimum wage hike. Went back on student loan debt, fracking. I mean, she starts talking about a block.
She became a U.S. Senator because she decided to get in bed with Steve Mnuchin. She wasn't going to prosecute One World Bank, even though the fucking San Francisco District Attorney's Office told her, fucking nail this guy's ass to the wall, wouldn't do it. He has never donated to a Democrat once in his life. He gave her $300,000 for her campaign. So it's like, as far as I'm concerned, you can see that trajectory was completely and utterly contrived. It was not real. It was the most flash in the pan thing I had ever seen. And whether he would ever admit it publicly or not, that Gavin wanted her to lose that fucking race. He's
he did.
No way. I ain't having it. I'm running for president in 28. You're not getting in my way. And that was probably the same for a lot of other people. They're all corrupt, but don't get me wrong. Whitmer was thinking that. Pritzker was thinking that. Bashir was thinking that. And of course, Shapiro was thinking that.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I don't think Shapiro's big time. He's not box office. But I tell you who is, the one guy that I do have hope for in 4 years, because, the freak show circumstances are the only way that the Democrats ever win the presidency. Clinton in 92, Obama following W, and then, of course, Biden with COVID. If it's not Gavin, hopefully it's Wes Moore, who's a really nice-looking black guy out of Maryland. Mm-hmm. And he's not, I wouldn't call him progressive, but at least he's got that strong leader, the angry competitor type. I don't know. I don't see a whole lot of people with this ethical credibility we're looking for.
Because they're not Democrats.
Right.
It's only going to take, I'm telling you guys, it's only going to take a little of that economic populism. Just a little, just a little bit of it. You give a little of that economic populism to the masses, J.D. Vance wins in a walk in 28. Because the party is in a really, really bad way. Yeah. A really bad way.
Yeah.
And now that Fetterman is floating that he's going to run, it's
God.
like,
Fuck that piece of shit.
they're really
Yeah.
it's like it's almost like the two parties are trying to flip, like legitimately, like they're trying to flip. And is it going to happen? I mean, listen, in some ancillary way, I think it has happened, but at the end of the day, they're both bought by corporate special interests, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
That's it.
They've both been dragging the Overton window to the right while holding hands for several years now. They're basically
Since
trying.
'92, really, that's when that started.
Oh yeah,
with Clinton and triangulation. This is what I think might be the secret, though. If we're going to have a revolution along generational lines, is I'm saying in my most upcoming essay that blame is underrated and forgiveness is overrated. I think blame placed in the right place is nothing more than the appropriate assignment of responsibility. So I say, if we could unite the country, there's only one way to get people who don't like each other to get along, right? And that's give them a problem they can't solve without working together. Or in an American political context, it's give them a common enemy, right? The
Sure.
Republicans and Democrats used to work a lot better back in the Cold War. Oh, the Cold War, the good old days.
They're trying it again. How's that working?
So now this is the next war. This is the culture war. It's no longer race. It's no longer gender. It's generation. Fuck the boomers. Fuck them all. Fuck the liberals. Fuck the conservatives. Fuck the conservatives for their evil. And fuck the baby boomer liberals for not being strong enough to stand up against it. And then I was talking to a guy who worked for Carter, and he's pretty high up in Democratic Party circles after the election. And I was like, dude, she did what Hillary did. She played to the center and to anti-Trump Republicans following Labor Day. And he's like, well, she probably wouldn't have done as well as she did if she hadn't have done that. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? 6.3 million votes, dude. She got 6.3 million fewer votes than Biden did in 2020. That's Bernie's coalition.
Yes.
That's all the people who were voting for Bernie who showed up for Biden because Bernie asked them to. And then they just didn't show up this time probably because it was too much of a pain in the ass to vote. And they were like, I don't know who this bitch is. I'm not coming out for her.
She didn't
Some California prosecutor.
Yeah.
I mean, a prosecutor of all types of people too.
Right.
You couldn't get someone out of labor. Like,
and they
Jesus
doubled
Christ.
down on it. They doubled down on it, like the prosecutor against the felon, as
Right.
if somehow that's a selling point to most people that law enforcement is the direction that we should be going.
As far as I'm concerned, if I was still an active supporter of the Democratic Party, I would have wanted a ticket of Fane O'Brien. That would have been my ticket.
That would have been good.
O'Brien's
That's just two
a little
white
sketchy,
guys,
though, isn't
though. Two
I
white
don't
guys.
think I don't
Can't
think
be two
O'Brien.
white
No,
guys.
I don't think O'Brien's sketchy at all. I think that there's a lot of conservative Teamsters out there, and I think he did what he thought he had to do. But at the end of the day, it's all about labor. Like, if the movement is not moving through labor and not moving through a
I agree.
living wage
Yeah.
and universal
Yep.
health care, then this is just a waste of time. Because
Yeah.
if there's one thing that I think, and we can conclude this conversation on, is that the thing about Mangione and why he's so significant to this moment is that eventually whatever change was going to spark a real political revolution of sorts, it was going to come from the outside. It was never coming from the inside. And the fact that this has happened and the fact that all corporate special interests are doing is making Mangione even more endearing to the masses. They're making him into a folk hero by, literally doing
Parading
the
him.
things. They did a perp walk today with 30 fucking officers surrounding him. Are you fucking crazy? And then you have the mayor standing behind. It's like, God damn
They're
it.
so proud of themselves. We got the guy.
You got the guy. Oh, yeah. It's like,
We got the
cop
guy
as well.
from McDonald's.
Yeah.
No, it's like, it's funny how we celebrate cops in our culture when, a lot of soldiers who see action, they're heroes. But the job of most cops in uniform is to wear the uniform and fill out paperwork. Like, that's most of their job.
Well,
Unless
Jen,
you're in,
you
like,
said-
Protect capital.
Yeah, Jen, you've said for the longest time, why don't you have them go out and solve cases that have been backlogged forever?
Yeah, I'm an abolitionist at this point. I don't like any of that shit. I think it's useless. Law enforcement has not kept us safe. It's never kept us safe. Its purpose is to protect capital, and it has nothing to do with keeping people safe, clearly.
Yes.
So, because if more cops made us safer, we'd be the safest place in the world, and yet
Okay.
we're not. So, I don't believe it works.
Well, I joked that
I
it's
don't like cops.
Well, if you spend $6.5 billion on your police force, which the NYPD does, you would think that there'd be an explanation as to why there's such waste. Well, a perfect example of that is the dog and pony show that they had to do as a grand spectacle today with Mangione. That costs a lot of money.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
that was
sure did.
so ridiculous too. Yeah, and not to mention it's the further
Yep.
militarization of the police in general. The cop city in Georgia. These police departments getting bigger and bigger budgets, becoming so bloated, getting all this equipment that they don't even need to begin with. When, like, did we not remember what defund the police was about? It was if you were like, if anybody was actually paying attention to what people were talking about, is reallocating funds from the police department to fulfill roles that the police shouldn't even be filling to
Yes,
begin
it was
with.
like restructuring the police so
Yeah,
that they could
it's like-
more
like-
specifically respond to the needs of the situation.
Yeah, it's like police
So they
shouldn't
have
be
social
going to
workers on
respond
task and
to
stuff.
mental illness episodes and whatnot, because that's how people get fucking killed. You send someone with a gun, people end up dying. Police have way too many roles for their limited capacity as units, I guess you could say.
Well, this is exactly why the military-industrial complex is maybe the biggest bane in our existence, because ultimately you get a lot of guys that I've known that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then they come back here and you see what a lot of their weaponry ends up doing. It just ends up going, directly to these local police forces, and
Yes.
everybody wants to play, wants to play war in a very,
Well,
Yeah.
they want to be commando, but I would also say that if you're not aware that there are more than 100 cop cities that
Yeah.
are going into effect around the country. The only reason that the one in Atlanta got the notice that it did is because of where they were putting it. Think about it. If you're buying some obscure land outside of a city and nobody really knows and it's private property, nobody's going to know what you're doing. So these things are happening all over the place.
Sure.
They are absolutely preparing for urban warfare.
Of
And
course.
that started coming from after what happened in Ferguson. And then that was exacerbated by the Black Lives Matter movement. But from what they've gotten from that wasn't, we need to rethink our whole policing. No, it was, we need to increase our policing because the
Right.
people are upset with how we're doing it. So cop cities are going to start being all over the place.
I think mass deportations will probably be the anvil that breaks the camel's back in terms of protests leading
I
to
hope.
outright violence.
I don't
does
think
happen,
that they're
yeah.
even anywhere near close to being able to do what they want to do. Like, he has
No.
no idea. He speaks out of his ass. The amount of law enforcement people that would be necessary to do what he's talking about doing, we just don't have that. So he's just speaking things that aren't actually.
Well, what if he just did
possible.
both? But they would probably just do low-hanging fruit. So, like, what if they just did border towns in Texas and all the border states?
They could do that, but the bigger
Right.
problem that they're going to have is with a whole bunch of CEOs who are not going to like their labor force not
Yeah.
being allowed to stay.
Yeah,
And this is the problem Trump's not
Yeah.
addressing, because wait till he starts doing that and he gets calls from all these companies being like, we can't have
This
produce.
is this
Yeah,
is
Without-
why-
especially when you consider that he wants to bring a lot of the labor back to the states to begin with, and like his thing with tariffs is like, oh, it's just to bring back manufacturing and bring all these jobs back to America. And it's like, well, if you've been doing that for the past 8 years because Biden's kept the tariffs in place and whatnot, that labor force is still here, and like I completely agree. You're not going to get rid of an entire swath of people who, yeah, they're here illegally, but they're also a large, there's a substantial portion of your labor force. And it's funny how you mentioned enforcing like a mass deportation to begin with of all these people would not only take years, like beyond Trump's term. This would be a very multi-year long project, unless you just start rounding up just millions of people and just putting them into camps. Which
I think that's what you're going to. I think that's what you're going to say.
Which would
I
be
think
a
that's what you're gonna say.
PR disaster. It's like
This is not going to be
funny
a
enough, it's like-
well-executed thing. This
No,
is gonna
No,
be
you're
a-
right. There's going to
Yeah.
be camp.
No,
There's
yeah.
going to be camp.
Which
They're
47%
already
of the
being
country
gulped.
is okay with, by the way.
And,
47% of America is okay with internment camps being used to facilitate mass deportations.
And once
Anyway,
again, the reason that this is happening is not because these people are all racists and they're all bigots and they hate everybody else. It's because they don't know whatever else the fuck to do. And I think a lot of people are just afraid of the prospect of using the word revolution. But at some point, you have to admit that this system cannot be salvaged. It can't.
Yeah.
And I am in commercial real estate, and I'm saying this.
Are you finally going to acknowledge the capitalism problem, or no?
Of course I acknowledge it, but I make choices in what I do. You think I consciously know that there are people that I just simply will not work with. If I know that a
Israelis
investment form, or that they're affiliated in any way, shape, or form with BlackRock or Starwood, I will not have anything to do with them. And that's a choice that I make. But not everybody's willing to make that choice. In fact, most people are not willing to make that choice.
Right.
They make a conscious effort to just go for wherever I can get the most money from.
Do you know why? Do you know why, Peter? Because capitalism.
Yeah, but it's conservative capitalism too. I mean, like there's the for-profit motive is used in a lot of other developed nations to facilitate productivity, but it's not the end all be all. Like we
not
worship
with
it.
universal
Like,
basic services.
That's the
Not
ironic
with-
part.
that's
Yeah,
the
I know.
thing.
Yeah, I know. But that's the ironic part of the what I call the Confederate Christian nationalism and their false god worship. They worship at the altar of the unregulated free market, and they violate the first commandment every fucking day when the way that they worship Trump too.
Yeah,
And
Jen brings up a good point about that too. It's like Trump has to reconcile with the fact that like he serves his billionaire buddies, so he's going to have to decide between his campaign promises and what he said at all his rallies and whatnot, all these promises that he made, which are ultimately very bad for the wealthy upper class and whatnot. He has to reconcile with those promises and also pleasing them because he's filling up his whole cabinet with them.
I definitely agree that there is different forms of capitalism, but again,
Yes, not for universal basic services.
Which
Those
is
countries. Yeah.
which is why I believe in a hybrid system. I believe that a system that cannot be, if capitalism cannot be equally matched by socialism, then there is no point. It is eventually the counterbalance will just be too strong. That's why the only countries in the world that have any close semblance to this are Germany, Japan, Australia, and maybe a few others mixed in. But that's about it. It's not a lot, but there are measurements of that. I think that China is pretty much ahead of us in a lot of ways at this point. So the only way that we're ever going to be able to combat what China is doing now is if we do move to a social democracy. There is no other way. Because you can't compete. You're driving. If you look at what NAFTA and normal trade relations with China did under my watch, the truth is that those particular policies. I mean, George Bush is the worst president of my lifetime, but my God, is Clinton close behind?
And no. I think Joe is closing in. I got to tell you, I think that we're seeing.
For a one-term president, holy fuck, is he evil?
That's what I'm saying.
And I don't even know so much if it's even him. I just know that he's pretty much brain dead at this point. Whoever's pulling the strings, I've been saying President Blinken for a long time. John Bolton is evil on the surface. Blinken is evil underneath the surface in the same fucking way. And that's what makes them so much worse when it's a person you think is actually on your side. No, I'd rather see the wolf coming. I'd much rather know that's
the MLK. Were you invoking the MLK Wolf versus Fox thing?
Yeah,
very much so.
And that's what's really frustrating too, is because like if October 7th didn't happen, Joe Biden would have been seen as a rather successful president, akin to maybe Obama when it comes to progressive policies. Like the NLRB is a really good example, strengthening unions, the CHIPS Act, bringing more jobs back to America and whatnot. But it's like that's all. His legacy is completely shrouded in his failure with his Israeli stance, with foreign policy in general. There's no getting around that. He's completely.
It's very similar to Jimmy Carter, right?
Right.
With the Iran, the hostages.
That's all he's remembered for. Like that ended up, giving us to Reagan, and Reagan destroyed fucking the whole country.
Well, I tell you what, I know you guys got to run, but in terms of just one little anecdote to that you might not have, I don't know if you watch our show, but we got to take on Reaganism. The whole like government is the problem. I feel like Pete, the guys that you're talking to, if I could talk to them, that's where I would go. I would just assault that assumption that government is the source of problems. That it's just an enormous oversimplification. But the way to do that, or one really interesting way to do that, is to talk about 9/11, because when everything broke down, when our intelligence broke down, and all the terrorists were getting on those planes, right? What was the last thing that was going to maybe save us? Airport security. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get the knives on board to kill everybody, right? Who was in charge of airport security September 11th, 2001? The airlines. So, it should have been the government running the airport security, and if it had, maybe 9/11 wouldn't have happened. So it's just one little thing I like to bring up with people who are run into that fight, because I think it's a good small little anecdote that destroys the oversimplification that like big government is the problem. Clinton, to your point, Pete, killed us with the era of big government is over.
Yep.
No, asshole, that's not the right framing. He conceded the framing to conservatives.
Yeah.
The framing is efficient and effective government versus inefficient or ineffective government.
Yeah.
And,
So anyway,
and Stat Pat, and I'll leave you with this thought. I think
yeah.
I actually think Clinton was worse than Reagan from this perspective. A lot of the things that, as I hate to use him as a reference, but he's actually right about this. The one thing that Jimmy Dore is right about is that Clinton was able to pass things that the Republicans could have only dreamed of being able to pass.
Yeah.
He created an environment where you were able to pass NAFTA. I passed NAFTA.
With a smile. And
Yeah.
we all
Glass-Steagall.
just went along with that. Oh,
with,
yeah.
with a smile and my little fun times behind the scenes. But I passed NAFTA. I passed normal trade relations with China. I passed the crime bill. I passed the Telecom Act.
Telecom Act,
For the
yeah.
coup de grace, I repealed Glass-Steagall.
Glass-Steagall.
As far as I'm concerned, the fact that Glass-Steagall hasn't been re-implemented, you want to know why there is no accountability for banks?
That's a fundraising thing.
Shit.
Yes.
Like, it's all so obvious what needs to happen.
So-
and that's why we're kind of stuck in the Biff horrific timeline now, because Bernie was the one. He was supposed to be the president in 2016, and
Yes.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz is going to meet a political end at some point. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to have
PERLMAN.
something.
That's
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I
Well,
completely
thank you guys so
agree.
much for coming on. Did you? Oh, sorry, Statbat. Did you have
Oh
something else you
no,
want to close
yeah,
out with?
Bernie
You
Sanders.
can close them out if you want.
Bernie Sanders should be comfortably finishing out his second term. right
Second
now.
term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I say. Because like people are annoyed that I'm like pro-violence or whatever. I'm like, no. We offered you the compromise in 2016.
Yeah.
Bernie was the compromise.
Yeah.
You all decided to do this the hard way.
Yeah.
I don't own that. That wasn't on me. I did everything I could to show you the better way. So at this point, it's sort of like,
Yeah, and Bernie
also-
wouldn't even have been necessary as a candidate in 2016 if Obama actually punished the bankers after 2008. Maybe
was it.
reinstated Glass-Steagall instead
That's
of
it.
whatever the fuck he put in implemented his.
But
his
Stat Pat, you have to remember something, and this is the key caveat here.
Mhm.
The only reason it didn't happen is because Jamie Dimon sat him down and says, "You want to be worth $100 million after you leave office? You leave the
Right.
bankers alone," and that's it.
Yeah,
That's
Jamie
it.
Dimon.
It's that simple.
Yeah. Yep.
And
It's
he
not that
decided between him and
that's
his
so
wife
gross.
that their
It's so
wealth,
gross.
it's not just the wealth and power, it's also being revered amongst the up.
Status.
They will always have it. Now, if they had decided to go ahead and prosecute the banks, rightfully so, especially starting with Lehman Brothers, if they had done what they were supposed to do, then he would have a legacy akin to somebody like an FDR
Yeah.
or even a Harry Truman, even though
And
Truman,
instead, he lives on Martha's Vineyard in a nice estate and hangs out with Springsteen. So
Yeah.
That's-
you had to throw
and
the
the only-
Springsteen reference in.
And he only jumps into action if it's to screw over progressives. It's just like, hey,
It's,
we
and
need
it's
a
not
little
even
bit-
so much, and it's not even so much to screw over progressives. He is such a fucking egomaniac that it's all about protecting what he perceives to be his legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
it. And you know what your legacy is now, Barry? Trump is now an historic president, one of only two to ever win non-consecutive terms. So congratulations.
Yeah, one
You're
of
now
two.
up there with in Cleveland, and you earned it.
Yeah.
All right, so Pete,
Yeah.
Let me paint a picture
also
for you.
add
If someone, hold on a second, Sabat.
Yeah.
So if Pete, if somebody came along with, who was like a firebrand and said, okay, we're going to completely transform the DNC. No more baby boomer liberal leadership. No more Clinton people. No more Biden people. No more Obama people. Bernie people and younger. Like, would you be down for that Democratic Party if that were to ever happen? I mean, it wouldn't happen for like 2 to 8 years. But...
I'm like Jen. I am still technically a registered Democrat, and at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to just go where the populist energy actually lies. If it's ever able to find its way into the Democratic Party again, that would be nice. I don't trust AOC as far as I can throw her. I think that there are some good
you can
people
probably
out
throw her
there.
pretty far.
Yeah, well, yeah, she is kind of.
She's pretty little.
Kind of but I think that the big difference between somebody like her and somebody like Obama is that she doesn't have that much power. She has a lot of popularity, but she was never in a position and probably will never be in a position to actually seize that kind of power because she's actually not as smart as she thinks she is. That's part of her problem. And then when you're trying to really, kind of take it over at this point, I'm with Jen. I'm just not sure it's possible because I think they are content to go the way of the Whigs rather than allow any type of an infrastructural takeover to actually happen. The only way we're going to get where we're going to go is through a labor movement that is almost assuredly going to come from outside the two-party system. And frankly, it might even come from outside of politics altogether. It's going to come from something like what Mangione has done. And the fear that I have, that I think everybody should have, is that if they continue down this road of trying to persecute this guy and basically prove that what their concerns are is strictly protecting capital and the highest echelons of society, there's another Mangione that's going to pop up in the very near.
Oh, they're in the find out portion. They're in the find out portion of what's happening, and I'm here for it. I find it again.
They're not even throwing a bone. They're not even attempting to throw a bone. No. They're basically saying, "Oh yeah, you think we're censoring your ass now? We're going to do it 10 times harder now." It's like, okay.
I'm genuinely surprised that something like this hasn't happened sooner.
Exactly.
Let alone that it happened as easily as it did. It's just like
exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what I said when Trump got shot at too. I was like, I'm surprised this hasn't happened sooner. I mean, this is what happens when an empire implodes: is the leaders get capped.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
I'm here for that. I'm here for it. I'm just glad it's people aiming in the right direction. Normally they go after disenfranchised poor people.
Yeah.
Well, talk to any go ahead, Pete.
I was just going to say 2 things before we go. The first one, I'll say 3 things before we go. Number 1, I love your background. I know Jen probably doesn't give a shit, but I think it's good. I really do.
Thank you.
I like it. And it's very representative.
I don't get it. What are we looking at? Oh, you mean the flag, the behind the thing? Oh, yeah, no, okay. I thought you were talking to his background. I'm like,
my messy bed. No, fuck that shit. No.
No, and it's a very honest background because, of course, we are one nation under the dollar. There is no 2 ways about it. But it does look cool. I also, and I would say this on behalf of Jen as well, I want to thank you two for being big supporters of our channel, always showing up in the chat. Everything counts, and that's why we always believe in giving back. I know not a lot of people in independent media, even ones with even a reasonable platform, are willing to do it, although I do always give a shout out to our good friend Jordan Chariton at Status Quo, and we are thrilled to see that he is finally crossing into an upper echelon of popular channels. He so deserves it because he does the work that must be done on the ground. And then, just in terms of where we go from here, I'm really not sure. I really don't know, but what I do know for certain is that things are starting to take shape in a way that we were hoping that they would back in 2016, but better late than ever. People are not trusting the system anymore. And good, they shouldn't, because the system has rolled way past its expiration date. As the great Ben Franklin said, most political systems are good for about 2 centuries. That's about it. And then after that, you got to find another way. And we are, at this point, probably...
We're expired.
We're a half a century later. We are. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the moment that Jack was assassinated, that was the end of the system. The system was officially dead on that day, and we are still trying to wake up to that reality. It's 60 years past its expiration date. Now we just have to figure out how long people are going to be desperately trying to hang on, like they're going to totally become rich and powerful like me one day. As soon as they start getting that shit out of their head, then there's going to be a lot more people that are going to start springing up and saying, you know what, Mangione was probably right. We actually do need a revolution. Okay, we'll see.
Love it.
All right, Pete.
Great,
Well, way
great
to bring us
sentiment.
home, man. That was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. So,
All right, well, you guys are welcome back anytime.
of course.
you.
We're
Yeah.
huge fans of your show, and we really appreciate you making the time. Go ahead, Steph.
Yeah.
Final
Yeah.
comment.
Just a couple things, I guess. I remember when I think it was when Jen Perlman first launched her campaign as for Congress. Of course, like I wouldn't know about you guys without the more prominent lefty channels, Secular Talk. I think Majority Report. I think I even saw Bo the Fifth Column join in on a stream once. Love him to death. My favorite channel. Yeah, I miss him a lot. I miss him a bunch. I love.
sad.
Yeah, I love Bell. I think the channel is doing great. I think the Roads with Bell is the Rants with Bell or whatever is doing really well as well. But absolutely,
The one lefty that we have to give a shout out to, who we love dearly, even though he's still way too married to the Democratic Party. But Mikey Figueredo is
Yeah.
still.
Oh yes.
We love Mike
Okay,
Figueredo.
so
Best.
think about
He's the
him.
best.
I really wouldn't have the following I do without the Humanist Report. A few years back, I believe he actually did a regular show that one that actually Jordan Sheridan was on, where he would the one that he shouted me out on was the one that actually gave me a lot of the following, because he would shout out smaller creators if they sent in a video to him via an email. And I happened to do that, and he gave me a shout out. He put me on his show, and I got up to 1,000 subs. Dropped off for like a year, but now I think because I have you guys on tonight, I might actually be back over 1,000 subs again. But it's a real privilege to be able to speak to you guys. And Pete, your impressions are fucking amazing.
Yeah, Pete, do you have any training, like theater training or anything like that? No? Do you? What? No? It's just sales?
No comment.
Just sales.
I could have. No, I was actually leading a play when I was 11, but I really,
That's not nothing. That's something.
I really don't like that world. And what's interesting is that
Were
I
you a
love,
tree? What did you play?
I was St. George.
Oh, this,
Oh,
this
the
is
dragon.
a Catholic thing?
That's right. And, yeah, I wore the priest uniform and everything. It was in a church. What do you want from me? Thank God I wasn't forced to be raised Catholic, because my father was like, do whatever you want to be. He was much more liberal in that regard. I appreciated that. Oh, we'll always appreciate that from my father.
There you go.
But at the end of the day, no, Jen has encouraged me to try stand up at some point with the masks on and the mannerisms. Like
No, don't do the mask. No, props are for hacks. No, you just go up there. So if you can learn stand-up comedy, actually, if you have some natural talent. I studied it and was in that world for a hot minute, and you'd be surprised if you get a good teacher teaching you some basic stuff. They can make it, more formulaic, because a lot of people are like, yeah, be funny, and they snap your fingers, and like that's how it works. It's like, no.
Well, what's interesting is I've actually, Jen and I have been to Jimmy's show, and I've seen him a handful of times. I've actually been
I
out with
almost
Jimmy.
saw him.
And what I do find interesting is that if you've ever seen him do his stand-up, just his stand-up, he's actually very funny. And I say that with respect to a lot of people who do it, and people think that they're funny, and honestly, they're not that funny. I don't think Joe Rogan is that good at stand-up. He's okay.
Used to be.
I do think that there are those who, who is and I've said this to Jen, and I saw him live. You know who's the biggest fucking Zion Nazi, and he absolutely is funny as fuck, and that's John Lovitz. If you've never seen John Lovitz do his stand-up, he is a funny fucking guy.
I've seen him in person in LA,
unfortunately, he's a Zion Nazi, and that's wrong.
Oh, man, Zion
gross.
Nazi. See, we're just political marketing machine right here. Zion Nazi, Confederate
Yeah,
flag waving, Bible beating gun
I heard
nut.
you guys say Zion Nazi during the streamer. I was like, that's
Jesus,
good.
it's hardcore.
That's Jen.
That's me.
Jet, all
I call
right,
him
hell
Zion
yeah, all
Nazi.
right. There you
That's
go.
a gen gem.
I like that.
It's
I like that.
well, they are. They're extremely fascist. They're extremely authoritarian, and they
question.
other and they punch down. So,
Well, the
Why
good
not?
news is, Jen, when we did the Gen Z podcast, guys, through their own research, they came to the conclusion that what's going on in Israel is a genocide on their own, and they researched on their own that AIPAC was the reason why. And I was like, thank Christ! Like, please tell me that your fellow Gen Zers are all doing this, because
They're
if they
getting
are,
it.
I think they are. I think they're getting that. Like, the baby boomer generation just came along and took as much as they could for themselves and left the rest of us holding a bag of shit. And now we gotta put the bag back in their fucking lap. Let them die with it.
That's why we have to keep having these conversations and continuing to build the populist movement. That's what it comes down to. That's
Thank
all.
you guys for having us on.
Oh,
Hey,
thank
thanks
you
for
guys for
coming on,
coming
guys.
on. Fantastic show. Really appreciate everybody
Are
tuning
you
in as
coming
well.
down here, Peter, on Monday? Are
I'm
you
not
coming
letting.
here?
I don't know yet. I'm coming down, but I don't know if I'm going to be in studio.
Guys,
I'll
this
let you
isn't
know.
post-stream banter yet.
I'm sorry, but I'm about to hang up and then I'm not going to see him.
No,
It's all good.
Understandable. Yeah, you guys are welcome back anytime. We'd love to come on if you guys invite us. This is probably we've been doing this show for a year now.
About a year. Yeah.
And it's probably my favorite one that we've done yet. We've done some good ones, but this was very much enjoyable. I really appreciate you guys.
Well,
Thank
we have,
you.
while we were going live, just so you know, I actually didn't realize, I forgot to mention to our producer, Colin, that to hit the crossover button, which I did. So, guys, if you are not currently subscribed to Left Coast Live, make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe, help them, gain some additional followers, some additional reach. Again, we're all in this to help each other out. At least we should be. If there's
Absolutely.
any socialist about me, it would definitely be that. So there you go.
Course.
Well, I got some
Share the
plans,
love.
guys. I got some plans I'll fill you in on later for this year, because we got to sow the seeds of revolution for the revolution to actually stand a chance of success, right? So
I'm
we
here
do that
for it.
now.
Hell
We do
yeah.
that now. All right,
right.
Pete,
Thank
Jen,
you,
thank you
guys.
guys for coming. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Happy holidays, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. That was fun.
That's fantastic.
Got a ton of I've got 33 people watching me now, which is
Holy
just great.
shit, that's insane.
Yeah,
I-
30 yeah, it's awesome. So we should keep going.
I've been sticking
Yeah,
around
I
like
mean, I think
8,
that it's
13.
interesting. You are a little bit more in their camp than I am. I still have hope for the Democratic Party, and maybe it's just because I see it as the only thing big and established enough that could stand a chance of coming up against the Republican Party. But that might be naive optimism. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that naive optimism has gotten a hold of me.
Yeah, ultimately it just comes down to like resistance more than anything, because like
Survival for the next 4 years.
yeah. I mean, I'm definitely sympathetic to like a third party thing and whatnot. It's just like just looking at it, it does come down to like, hell yeah, Thunderjock. It does come down to like what we were talking before, local politics, state races, local races, down ballot and whatnot, and but the last few elections, the Greens have gotten less votes each time around when it comes to like the presidential race. But yeah, that was awesome. I had such a blast. That was
Yeah,
a
they're
hell
the
of a
best,
lot of
dude.
fun.
They're great. They're great.
Yeah.
They're great. And
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like it's too bad we need to find American Richard Branson to buy MSNBC and give us all a show.
Oh yeah.
Because we do a hell of a lot better than the current MSNBC people.
Of
I don't know.
course.
We could keep going if you want. Like, I mean, I had all the notes. I mean, I'm in pretty good shape now. But unless you got anything else you want to talk about, anything in the news or whatnot. Otherwise, I think we're good at an hour 15.
Yeah, nothing else really came to mind. If you guys are watching, thank you guys so much for the support and whatnot. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Stateless Patriot channel and American Wasp with Dieter McBusiness. Yeah, like we were telling Jen and Pete, we started the show almost a year ago because Dieter here actually reached out to me and found. He liked some of the content that I was doing, and ironically
It was
enough,
the anti-Jimmy Dore messaging. It was when I
Yeah.
came across your Jimmy Dore video.
Yeah, so back in August 2021, I put out a like almost 2 hour long like expose, I guess you could say, on Jimmy Dore, just shitting all over him and how awful he is. And this is before he like fully left the left, before he even got into the anti-vax kind of bullshit. And it ended up being like my biggest video at the time. He reached out to me, showed me some his earliest videos, and I really enjoy what I saw. He's rather brilliant, and so we linked up, and we've been doing this show at the Left Coast for the better part of a year now. We stream on each of our channels, and it's been slowly but surely we've been gaining a bit more traction. But I think exposure like this under Jen's show is very we're very grateful. We're very grateful for all of you being here. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely. All right. For StatPat Stateless Patriot, I am your host, Dieter McBusiness. This was Left Coast Live for Thursday, December 19th, 2024. Have a fabulous Christmas.
Yeah.
StatPat and I may or may not be back next week. We'll let you know.
Have a good night, guys. Take it easy.
Merry Christmas. Oh, and don't forget, you don't get changed in America by us.